The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of Kensington Palace as Prince William adjusted his collar and checked his watch. Today was different from his usual routine of charitable visits and royal engagements. Today, he had received an urgent message that would change everything he thought he knew about palace security and the people who protected his family. Thomas Hartwell had been standing at his post for exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. As a senior protection officer with 15 years of experience guarding the royal family, he knew the importance of precision, timing, and unwavering dedication to protocol. His weathered hands gripped the radio clipped to his uniform as he monitored the various checkpoints throughout the palace grounds. The morning had been unusually quiet, but Thomas had learned never to trust the calm. Prince William walked briskly through the marble corridors, his mind racing with thoughts about the strange phone call he had received the night before. An anonymous caller had warned him about a potential security breach, claiming that someone within the palace staff had been passing information to unauthorized individuals. The caller had been specific about the location where evidence could be found, directing him to a restricted area of the palace that even he rarely visited. As he approached the East Wing, William noticed the increased security presence. Guards who usually nodded respectfully as he passed now watched him with heightened alertness. Something was definitely wrong, and the atmosphere felt charged with tension that made his royal training kick into high gear. He had been taught from a young age to remain calm under pressure, but today tested those lessons more than any formal ceremony or public appearance ever had. Thomas received a crackling message through his radio that made his blood run cold. Intelligence services had intercepted communications suggesting that a member of the royal family might unknowingly be walking into a dangerous situation. The details were vague, but the threat level had been elevated to critical. As he scanned the corridors through the security monitors, his trained eye caught sight of Prince William moving toward the restricted wing with determined purpose. The prince paused outside the heavy oak door that led to the palace archives, a section that housed centuries of royal documents and artifacts. According to the anonymous tip, this was where he would find evidence of the security leak. The door was unmarked and typically locked, but as he approached, he noticed it was slightly ajar. His instincts told him to call for security, but curiosity and concern for his family's safety drove him forward. Thomas was already moving before his conscious mind fully processed what he was seeing on the monitors. Years of training had taught him to trust his instincts, and every alarm bell in his experienced mind was ringing. He knew the prince's habits, his usual routes through the palace, and this deviation from normal patterns combined with the elevated threat level created a perfect storm of concern. His radio crackled with updates from other security personnel, but he was focused entirely on reaching that door before anything irreversible happened. As William reached for the door handle, he heard footsteps echoing rapidly down the corridor behind him. The sound was urgent, purposeful, and growing closer with each passing second. He turned to see a uniformed guard approaching at a controlled run, his expression serious and determined. This was Thomas Hartwell, though William didn't immediately recognize him among the dozens of security personnel who worked tirelessly to protect the royal family. Thomas had made a split-second decision that would define his career and possibly save lives. Protocol dictated that he should radio for backup and coordinate with other security teams before confronting any situation involving a member of the royal family. However, the combination of the elevated threat level, the prince's unusual behavior, and his years of experience told him that immediate action was required. He couldn't risk waiting for authorization when every second could be crucial. The two men faced each other in the ornate corridor, surrounded by centuries of royal history captured in oil paintings and marble sculptures. William, accustomed to deference and immediate compliance with his wishes, prepared to identify himself and explain his purpose. Thomas, trained to prioritize safety above all social conventions, prepared to do his job regardless of who stood before him. Neither man fully understood the complexity of the situation they were about to navigate together. William's first instinct was to assert his authority and continue with his investigation. He had grown up in these halls, had been taught that his position carried both privilege and responsibility. The anonymous warning had specifically mentioned this location, and he felt compelled to uncover the truth about the potential security breach. However, something in the guard's demeanor gave him pause. This wasn't the usual respectful attention he received from palace staff. This was the intense focus of a professional who sensed danger. Thomas evaluated the situation with the methodical approach that had kept him employed in royal protection for over a decade. The prince appeared to be alone, which was unusual for any movement through the palace. His body language suggested urgency and determination, rather than the relaxed confidence typical of routine royal activities. Most concerning was the fact that this visit to the restricted archives hadn't appeared on any of the security briefings or daily schedules that Thomas routinely reviewed. The anonymous phone call that had started this chain of events had been traced to a number that no longer existed, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Unknown to both William and Thomas, this had been the first move in an elaborate plan designed to test the palace security systems and identify potential vulnerabilities. The real threat wasn't in the archives themselves, but in how the security team would respond to an unexpected situation involving a member of the royal family. As William stepped closer to the door, Thomas made his decision. Years of training had taught him that hesitation could be fatal in security work, and every instinct he possessed was screaming that something was wrong with this scenario. The prince's presence in this location, at this time, without proper security escort or advance notification, violated every protocol that kept the royal family safe. His duty was clear, regardless of the potential social awkwardness of challenging a member of the family he was sworn to protect. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions as the two men prepared for a confrontation that neither had anticipated when they woke up that morning. William's hand was inches from the door handle, while Thomas was close enough to intervene if necessary. The weight of responsibility pressed down on both of them, each feeling the burden of making the right decision in a situation where the consequences of being wrong could be devastating. Thomas had seen enough security breaches in his career to know that threats often came from unexpected directions, and in forms that initially appeared harmless. A member of the royal family acting outside normal protocols could be the result of coercion, impersonation, or manipulation by hostile forces. His job wasn't to question the motivations of those he protected, but to ensure their safety by maintaining the security measures that had been carefully developed and refined over generations. The morning light streaming through the tall windows created dramatic shadows that seemed to emphasize the gravity of the moment. William could feel the intensity of the guards' attention and began to understand that this wasn't a simple matter of a staff member being overly cautious. The professional alertness in Thomas's stance and expression suggested that he was responding to a genuine security concern, not just following routine procedures. Both men were products of their training and experience, shaped by years of preparation for moments exactly like this. William had been taught to balance his royal prerogatives with respect for the expertise of those charged with protecting him and his family. Thomas had been trained to prioritize safety above all other considerations, including the potential displeasure of those he served. The collision of these two sets of principles was about to create a situation that would test both men's character and judgment. As the tension in the corridor reached its peak, neither man could have predicted that their interaction was being carefully monitored by individuals who had orchestrated this entire scenario. The real test wasn't whether William would find evidence in the archives or whether Thomas would successfully prevent a security breach. The real test was whether the palace security systems could adapt and respond effectively when faced with an unprecedented situation that challenged established protocols and relationships. The anonymous caller who had started this chain of events was, at that very moment, analyzing the response patterns and decision-making processes of both the royal family and their protection detail. This information would prove invaluable for future security planning, but first, both William and Thomas would need to navigate the immediate challenge of understanding each other's motivations and finding a way to resolve their standoff without compromising anyone's safety or dignity. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal the true character of both men and test the resilience of the security systems designed to protect one of the world's most closely guarded families. What happened next would depend on their ability to communicate, trust each other's expertise, and find common ground in their shared commitment to protecting the people and institution they both served. Thomas Hartwell's voice cut through the ornate silence of the palace corridor with the authority of someone who had faced life-threatening situations and made split-second decisions that saved lives. His words were measured but firm, carrying the weight of 15 years protecting the royal family and the absolute certainty that his duty superseded all other considerations, including social rank and royal prerogative. "Step away from the door, Your Royal Highness," Prince William froze mid-stride, his hand suspended inches from the ornate brass handle. The formality in Thomas's address couldn't mask the underlying command in his tone. This wasn't a request or a respectful suggestion. It was an order from a security professional who had identified a potential threat and was prepared to act on his assessment regardless of the personal consequences. The prince turned slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to curiosity as he studied the guard's face. Thomas Hartwell was a man in his early 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen enough to make him cautious about everything and trusting of nothing until proven safe. His uniform was impeccable, his posture alert but not aggressive, and his hand rested casually but purposefully near his radio and emergency equipment. William had encountered thousands of security personnel throughout his life, but something in Thomas's demeanor told him this was different. This wasn't the usual protective hovering that he had learned to navigate and occasionally circumvent. This was a professional assessment of risk by someone who took his responsibilities seriously enough to challenge even a member of the royal family when necessary. "I need to access this room," William said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that came naturally to someone raised for leadership. "There's been a security concern brought to my attention, and I believe evidence may be found in the archives." Thomas didn't move from his position, though his expression softened slightly as he processed the prince's explanation. His training had prepared him for many scenarios, but confronting a member of the royal family who genuinely believed he was investigating a security threat presented unique challenges. The sincerity in William's voice was obvious, but sincerity didn't eliminate the possibility of manipulation, coercion, or misinformation. "Sir, I understand your concern, but I cannot allow you to enter that room without proper security clearance and backup," Thomas replied, his tone respectful but unwavering. "The current threat level requires that all movements through restricted areas be coordinated with the Central Security Team. This is for your protection, as much as anything else." The mention of elevated threat levels caught William's attention. He had been so focused on the anonymous tip about the potential security leak that he hadn't considered the broader security situation at the palace. His training in royal protocols had taught him to trust the expertise of his protection detail, but his instincts as someone responsible for his family's welfare urged him to take immediate action on the information he had received. Thomas watched the prince's face carefully, noting the conflict between duty and protocol that was playing out in his expression. This was exactly the kind of situation that his training had prepared him for, though the theoretical scenarios in security briefings never quite captured the human complexity of real confrontations. He could see that Prince William genuinely believed he was acting in the best interests of palace security, which made the situation more delicate but no less potentially dangerous. "What kind of security concern?" Thomas asked, shifting slightly to maintain his position between the prince and the door while opening a dialogue that might help him better assess the situation. His hand moved unconsciously to his radio, ready to call for backup if the conversation escalated or if he detected any signs that the prince was under duress or not acting of his own free will. William hesitated for a moment, weighing how much information to share with someone whose authority he didn't immediately recognize. The anonymous caller had been specific about maintaining secrecy until the evidence was secured, but the guard's obvious professionalism and genuine concern for security suggested that bringing him into confidence might be the right approach. "I received information last night about a possible breach in palace security," William explained, choosing his words carefully. "Someone with access to confidential information may be passing details to unauthorized parties. I was told that evidence could be found in the archives, specifically in the section that deals with recent security protocols and staff access records." Thomas processed this information while maintaining his alert stance. The scenario the prince described was certainly possible and would explain his urgency, but it also fit the profile of several intelligence scenarios designed to test security responses or manipulate protected individuals into compromising positions. His experience had taught him that the most dangerous threats often came disguised as legitimate concerns or emergency situations. "Sir, if you've received information about a potential security breach, the proper protocol is to report it immediately to the head of security," Thomas said firmly. "Investigating such matters personally, especially in restricted areas, could compromise both your safety and any potential evidence. It could also alert the suspected individual if they have access to security monitoring systems." The logic in Thomas's argument was undeniable, and William felt his certainty about the correct course of action beginning to waver. He had been so focused on taking immediate action that he hadn't fully considered the possibility that his investigation might actually interfere with proper security procedures. However, the anonymous caller had been insistent about the urgency of the situation and the need for discretion. The caller specifically warned against going through normal channels, William said, his frustration beginning to show. They suggested that the security breach might involve someone in a position of authority who would be alerted by standard reporting procedures. Time may be critical here. Thomas had heard similar justifications before, and while they sometimes proved legitimate, they were also common elements in social engineering attacks designed to bypass security protocols. The fact that the anonymous caller had specifically discouraged the use of proper security channels raised red flags that his training had taught him never to ignore. "Your Royal Highness, I understand the urgency you feel, but consider this," Thomas said, his tone becoming more conversational while maintaining his professional alertness. "If there truly is a security breach involving someone in authority, then your investigating alone would put you at enormous risk. If the information is false or part of a larger deception, then you could be walking into a trap. Either way, proper security protocols exist to protect you from exactly these kinds of scenarios." The corridor around them seemed to amplify the tension as both men grappled with their responsibilities and the uncertainty of the situation. William could see the wisdom in Thomas's arguments, but the weight of responsibility for his family's safety made it difficult to simply walk away from a potential threat. Thomas could sense the prince's internal struggle and recognized it as the mark of someone who took his duties seriously, which actually increased his respect for the man he was protecting. A distant sound echoed through the palace corridors, the subtle noise of footsteps and radio chatter that suggested other security personnel were beginning to take notice of their prolonged conversation. Thomas's radio crackled softly with routine check-ins from other posts, a reminder that their standoff was taking place within a larger security network that was designed to respond to unusual situations. "What if we compromise?" William suggested, recognizing that neither of them was likely to back down completely. "You accompany me into the archives, we examine the area together, and if we find evidence of a security breach, we immediately report it through proper channels. If we find nothing, then we know the anonymous tip was false, and no harm is done." Thomas considered the proposal carefully. It would allow him to maintain security oversight while acknowledging the prince's genuine concern. However, entering a restricted area based on anonymous information still violated multiple security protocols, and he would be responsible for any consequences that resulted from that decision. "Sir, I appreciate the compromise you're suggesting, but I still cannot authorize entry to that area without proper clearance," Thomas said firmly. "However, I can immediately contact the head of security, explain your concerns, and request an emergency review of the archives. This would address your security concerns while maintaining proper protocols." The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, and both men realized that their conversation was about to become a much larger security incident. William could see that Thomas was absolutely committed to following proper procedures, while Thomas could see that the prince was genuinely concerned about a potential threat to his family's safety. "How long would an emergency review take?" William asked, clearly struggling with the delay that proper procedures would require. "With the current elevated threat level, it would be treated as a priority," Thomas replied. "A security team could be assembled and briefed within 30 minutes, and the archives could be thoroughly examined within an hour. If there is genuine evidence of a breach, this approach would preserve it properly for investigation and potential prosecution." William weighed his options as the footsteps in the corridor grew closer. He could continue to insist on immediate entry, potentially creating a larger security incident and undermining the very people responsible for protecting his family. Alternatively, he could trust in the security procedures that had been developed by experts and refined through years of experience protecting the royal family. The decision point had arrived, and both men understood that what happened next would set the tone for how this unusual situation would be resolved. Thomas remained positioned firmly between the prince and the door, prepared to maintain his stance regardless of the social awkwardness it created. William stood facing a choice between his instincts to take immediate action and his training to trust the expertise of those charged with his protection. As the approaching footsteps rounded the corner and additional security personnel came into view, both William and Thomas realized that their private confrontation was about to become a very public test of royal protocols, security procedures, and the delicate balance of authority and protection that defined life within the palace walls. Chief Security Officer Margaret Hayes arrived at the scene with the measured urgency of someone who had managed royal protection for over 20 years. Her appearance in the corridor immediately changed the dynamics of the confrontation between Prince William and Thomas Hartwell, introducing a level of authority that both men recognized and respected. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her eyes quickly assessed the situation with the expertise of someone who had navigated countless security challenges. "Your Royal Highness, Mr. Hartwell." She acknowledged both men with a slight nod. "I understand we have a situation that requires immediate attention." Thomas felt a wave of relief at his superior's arrival, knowing that the responsibility for handling this delicate situation was now shared with someone who had the authority to make decisions that he couldn't make alone. He quickly briefed Chief Hayes on the prince's concerns about the anonymous tip and the potential security breach, while also explaining his decision to prevent unauthorized access to the restricted archives. Margaret Hayes listened carefully to both accounts, her expression neutral as she processed the information and considered the various security implications. Her experience had taught her that situations involving anonymous tips required careful handling, as they could represent genuine threats, false alarms, or deliberate attempts to manipulate security protocols and expose vulnerabilities. "Your Royal Highness, I appreciate your concern for palace security and your family's safety," she said diplomatically. "However, Mr. Hartwell was absolutely correct in preventing unauthorized access to the archives. Anonymous tips, regardless of their apparent urgency, must be investigated through proper channels to ensure both your safety and the integrity of any potential evidence. Prince William could see the wisdom in this approach, though his frustration with the delay was evident. The anonymous caller had emphasized the urgency of the situation, suggesting that evidence might be destroyed if immediate action wasn't taken. However, he was beginning to understand that his personal investigation might actually compromise the very security he was trying to protect. Chief Hayes made a decision that balanced the prince's legitimate concerns with proper security protocols. "I'm going to authorize an immediate security sweep of the archives," she announced. "A specialized team will examine the areas mentioned in your anonymous tip using proper forensic procedures to preserve any evidence that might be found. This will address your concerns while maintaining the integrity of our security procedures." The radio attached to Margaret's uniform crackled with updates from various security posts throughout the palace. The elevated threat level that Thomas had mentioned was part of a broader security assessment that had been ongoing for several weeks, triggered by intelligence reports of potential threats to royal family members. The anonymous tip about a security breach fit into this larger pattern of concern, making it impossible to dismiss despite its unusual origins. As they waited for the specialized security team to arrive, Chief Hayes took the opportunity to explain some of the complexities of royal protection that the public rarely understood. The balance between maintaining the royal family's ability to fulfill their duties and ensuring their safety required constant adjustment of security protocols, risk assessments, and response procedures. "The archives contain extremely sensitive information," she explained to Prince William. "Not just historical documents, but also current security protocols, staff background checks, and intelligence assessments that could be invaluable to anyone planning to harm the royal family. If there has been unauthorized access to this information, it could compromise security measures that have taken years to develop and implement." Thomas remained at his post while additional security personnel began arriving in the corridor. His decision to challenge Prince William had been vindicated by his superior's response, but he knew that the real test would be whether the investigation revealed genuine evidence of a security breach or exposed the anonymous tip as a false alarm or deliberate deception. The specialized security team that Chief Hayes had summoned consisted of experts in forensic analysis, intelligence assessment, and electronic surveillance. They carried equipment designed to detect unauthorized access, hidden recording devices, and any signs that documents or computer systems had been tampered with. Their arrival transformed the ornate palace corridor into a temporary command center for a serious security investigation. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead forensic analyst, briefed the group on the procedures they would follow. Every surface, document, and electronic system in the archives would be systematically examined for signs of unauthorized access or tampering. The investigation would be thorough but also designed to minimize disruption to the historical artifacts and sensitive documents housed in the restricted area. Prince William watched the professional efficiency of the security team with a mixture of admiration and impatience. He could see that these individuals were experts in their field, approaching the investigation with a level of thoroughness and expertise that his personal examination could never have matched. However, the methodical pace of their work contrasted sharply with the urgency that the anonymous caller had emphasized. Chief Hayes positioned herself where she could monitor both the investigation and maintain communication with Prince William. Her experience had taught her that managing the human elements of security situations was often as important as the technical aspects of threat assessment and evidence collection. The prince's genuine concern for his family's safety was admirable, but it needed to be channeled through proper procedures to be effective. As the security team began their systematic examination of the archives, Thomas reflected on the morning's events and the decision-making process that had led to this moment. His choice to challenge Prince William had been based on training, instinct, and a commitment to security protocols that sometimes required difficult personal decisions. The validation of his actions by Chief Hayes reinforced his confidence in the procedures that guided royal protection. The first phase of the investigation focused on the electronic security systems that monitored access to the archives. Dr. Chen and her team examined the electronic locks, surveillance cameras, and access logs that recorded every entry and exit from the restricted area. They were looking for any signs that these systems had been bypassed, disabled, or manipulated by someone with unauthorized access. Initial findings were troubling. The electronic access log showed several entries to the archives during off hours when no authorized personnel should have been in that area of the palace. The entries were recorded using valid security credentials, but the timing and frequency of the visits suggested possible unauthorized activity. However, the investigation also revealed that some of these entries corresponded to legitimate maintenance and inventory activities that had been properly scheduled but not reflected in the daily security briefings. Prince William's frustration with the methodical pace of the investigation was tempered by his growing understanding of the complexity of royal security. The archives contained not just historical documents but also detailed information about current security procedures, staff assignments, and vulnerability assessments that could be extremely valuable to anyone planning to harm the royal family. Dr. Chen's team discovered evidence of unauthorized photocopying activity in the archives, with documents scattered across work tables and copying machines showing recent use outside of normal operating hours. However, further investigation revealed that this activity was part of a legitimate research project being conducted by palace historians who had received proper authorization that hadn't been communicated to all security personnel. The investigation continued with an examination of the physical documents and artifacts housed in the archives. The team was looking for any signs that sensitive security documents had been accessed, copied, or photographed without authorization. They used specialized equipment to detect fingerprints, fiber evidence, and any other traces that might indicate unauthorized presence in the restricted area. As the morning progressed, a clearer picture of the situation began to emerge. While there was no evidence of unauthorized access to the most sensitive security documents, the investigation revealed several procedural gaps that could potentially be exploited by someone with knowledge of palace operations. The anonymous tip, whether genuine or not, had exposed vulnerabilities in communication between different security departments and highlighted the need for better coordination of legitimate activities that might appear suspicious without proper context. Chief Hayes briefed Prince William on the preliminary findings, emphasizing that while no immediate security breach had been confirmed, the investigation had identified areas where security procedures could be strengthened. The anonymous tip had served as a valuable stress test of the palace security systems, revealing both strengths and weaknesses in their response protocols. Thomas continued to monitor the investigation while reflecting on the morning's events. His confrontation with Prince William had been professionally handled and had resulted in a thorough security assessment that might not have occurred otherwise. The experience reinforced his understanding that effective royal protection sometimes required difficult decisions that balanced respect for the royal family with unwavering commitment to their safety. As the specialized security team prepared to expand their investigation to other areas of the palace, it became clear that the anonymous tip had triggered a comprehensive review of security procedures that would continue for several days. Whether the tip represented a genuine concern, a false alarm, or a deliberate test of palace security, It had succeeded in highlighting the importance of maintaining vigilant and adaptive protection measures for the royal family. The investigation was far from over, but the initial findings had validated both Prince William's concern for his family's safety and Thomas Hartwell's commitment to following proper security protocols. The balance between these two priorities would continue to shape the ongoing investigation and any changes to security procedures that might result from the morning's events. Detective Inspector Rebecca Morrison arrived at Kensington Palace 3 hours after the investigation began, bringing with her expertise in analyzing sophisticated security threats and the resources of the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Protection Unit. Her arrival signaled that the anonymous tip and subsequent investigation had revealed enough concerning evidence to warrant external law enforcement involvement. The preliminary findings from Dr. Chen's forensic team had uncovered a pattern of activities that, while individually explainable, collectively suggested possible coordinated surveillance of palace security procedures. Someone with legitimate access to various areas of the palace had been systematically documenting security protocols, staff schedules, and vulnerability assessments in ways that exceeded their authorized responsibilities. Prince William sat in Chief Hayes's office, reviewing the detailed briefing documents that outlined what the investigation had discovered so far. The evidence was circumstantial but troubling, suggesting that the anonymous tip might have been accurate about a security breach, even if the specific details about the archives had been misleading or incomplete. Thomas Hartwell found himself at the center of a complex investigation that had grown far beyond his morning confrontation with the prince. His decision to prevent unauthorized access to the archives had preserved potential evidence and maintained the integrity of security protocols that were now being scrutinized by multiple agencies. However, he was also grappling with the realization that the palace's security might have been compromised for weeks or months before the anonymous tip brought the situation to light. Detective Inspector Morrison reviewed the evidence with the methodical approach of someone who had investigated numerous threats against high-profile individuals and institutions. The pattern of unauthorized access and information gathering suggested either an inside threat or sophisticated external surveillance that had compromised multiple levels of palace security. Either scenario required immediate and comprehensive response measures. The investigation had expanded to include analysis of communication records, financial transactions, and travel patterns of all palace staff with access to sensitive security information. Chen's forensic team had discovered evidence of sophisticated electronic surveillance equipment that had been carefully concealed within the palace infrastructure, suggesting a level of planning and resources that exceeded typical criminal enterprises. Chief Hayes coordinated the multiple aspects of the investigation while maintaining the operational security necessary to protect the royal family during this period of heightened vulnerability. The discovery of electronic surveillance equipment had forced a complete review of all palace communication systems and electronic security measures, a process that would take days to complete thoroughly. Prince William struggled with the implications of what the investigation was revealing. The anonymous tip that had seemed like a simple warning about a potential security leak had exposed a sophisticated operation that threatened not just his family's privacy, but potentially their safety as well. His frustration with the morning's security protocols was replaced by appreciation for the thorough response that those protocols had enabled. The electronic surveillance equipment that Dr. Chen's team had discovered was professionally installed and nearly undetectable without specialized equipment. The devices were capable of intercepting communications, recording conversations, and monitoring electronic access to sensitive areas of the palace. Their placement suggested intimate knowledge of palace operations and access to areas that should have been secure. Detective Inspector Morrison's analysis of the evidence suggested that the operation had been ongoing for at least 6 months, with information being systematically collected and transmitted to external locations that had not yet been identified. The scope and sophistication of the surveillance indicated either state-sponsored intelligence gathering or organized criminal activity with substantial resources and planning capabilities. Thomas reflected on the morning's events with a new understanding of how his confrontation with Prince William had potentially prevented a much more serious security disaster. By following protocols and preventing unauthorized access to the archives, he had preserved evidence and maintained the integrity of areas that contained the most sensitive security information. His decision, which had seemed like simple adherence to procedures, had proven crucial to the investigation. The anonymous tip itself became a subject of investigation, as Detective Inspector Morrison's team worked to trace its origins and determine whether it represented insider information, external intelligence, or coincidental timing. The caller's knowledge of the palace's security procedures and the specific location of evidence suggested either direct involvement in the surveillance operation or access to information that should have been highly restricted. Dr. Chen's analysis of the surveillance equipment revealed that it was capable of not just monitoring communications and movements, but also of detecting and potentially interfering with the palace's own security systems. The sophisticated nature of the technology suggested access to intelligence-grade equipment and expertise that pointed toward either state-sponsored activity or criminal organizations with substantial technical capabilities. Prince William participated in security briefings that revealed the full scope of the threat that had been operating within the palace walls. The information that had been collected through the surveillance operation included detailed knowledge of royal family schedules, security protocols, staff assignments, and vulnerability assessments that could be used to plan serious attacks or other hostile activities. Chief Hayes coordinated the response measures necessary to address the immediate security threats while maintaining the royal family's ability to fulfill their public duties. The discovery of the surveillance operation required not just removal of the monitoring equipment, but also a complete reassessment of palace security procedures and the implementation of enhanced countermeasures to prevent similar infiltrations in the future. The investigation revealed that the sophistication of the surveillance operation extended beyond simple information gathering, to include active attempts to manipulate palace security procedures and create vulnerabilities that could be exploited for future operations. The anonymous tip itself might have been part of this manipulation, designed to test security response procedures and identify weaknesses in the palace's threat assessment capabilities. Thomas's role in the morning's events took on new significance, as investigators realized that his adherence to security protocols had prevented the surveillance operation from achieving one of its key objectives. The archives contained not just historical documents, but also the most current and detailed security assessments that would have provided unprecedented insight into royal family protection measures. Detective Inspector Morrison's team worked with international intelligence agencies to trace the origins and connections of the surveillance operation, a process that revealed links to similar activities targeting government facilities and high-profile individuals in multiple countries. The operation appeared to be part of a larger intelligence-gathering effort that had implications beyond just royal family security. The evidence collected during the investigation painted a picture of a sophisticated and patient operation that had been carefully planned and executed over many months. The individuals responsible had intimate knowledge of palace operations, access to advanced surveillance technology, and the patience to collect information systematically rather than attempting more dramatic but riskier approaches. Prince William's understanding of royal security was fundamentally changed by the investigation's revelations. The procedures and protocols that had sometimes seemed overly cautious or restrictive were revealed to be essential defenses against threats that were far more sophisticated and persistent than he had previously imagined. His respect for the security professionals who protected his family was deepened by their professional response to the crisis. The morning's confrontation between Thomas and Prince William was analyzed as part of the investigation's broader assessment of security procedures and response capabilities. The incident demonstrated both the importance of maintaining strict protocols and the challenge of balancing security requirements with the royal family's need to respond to legitimate concerns about their safety. As the investigation entered its second day, the full scope of the surveillance operation began to emerge, revealing a threat that was far more serious and sophisticated than anyone had initially suspected. The anonymous tip that had started the morning's events had exposed not just a simple security breach, but an ongoing intelligence operation that threatened the fundamental security of the royal family and the institutions they represented. The resolution of this security crisis would require not just the removal of immediate threats, but also comprehensive changes to palace security procedures and the development of new countermeasures to address the evolving nature of threats against high-profile targets in the modern world. 6 weeks after the confrontation in the palace corridor, Thomas Hartwell stood in the same location where he had challenged Prince William, but this time he was accompanied by the prince himself, as they reviewed the comprehensive security upgrades that had been implemented throughout Kensington Palace. The investigation that began with an anonymous phone call had revealed a sophisticated surveillance operation that required fundamental changes to royal protection protocols. The final report from Detective Inspector Morrison's investigation revealed that the surveillance operation had been conducted by a network of individuals with connections to organized criminal enterprises and possibly state-sponsored intelligence services. The sophistication of their equipment and methods indicated access to resources and expertise typically associated with national intelligence agencies, making the threat far more serious than anyone had initially suspected. Prince William had spent the weeks following the initial investigation working closely with security professionals to understand the full implications of what had been discovered and to participate in the development of enhanced protection measures. His experience with the anonymous tip and the subsequent investigation had given him a deeper appreciation for the complexity of modern security threats and the expertise required to address them effectively. Thomas had been recognized for his professional handling of the morning's confrontation and his role in preserving evidence that proved crucial to the investigation. His decision to follow security protocols despite the social awkwardness of challenging a member of the royal family had been vindicated by subsequent events, reinforcing the importance of maintaining professional standards regardless of personal or social pressures. The surveillance equipment that Dr. Chen's team had discovered throughout the palace was traced to a network of suppliers and technicians who had systematically infiltrated various aspects of palace operations over a period of nearly 2 years. The patience and planning involved in the operation indicated a level of commitment and resources that had required an equally comprehensive response from security agencies. Chief Security Officer Margaret Hayes had overseen the implementation of enhanced security measures that addressed not just the immediate threats revealed by the investigation, but also the evolving nature of surveillance technology and intelligence gathering techniques. The new procedures represented a fundamental upgrade to royal protection that would serve as a model for securing high-profile individuals and institutions against modern threats. The anonymous phone call that had triggered the morning's events remained partially mysterious, despite extensive investigation. While some evidence suggested it might have come from someone within the surveillance network who had developed concerns about the operation's objectives, other indicators pointed toward deliberate manipulation designed to test palace security response capabilities. The true identity and motivations of the caller might never be fully determined. Dr. Sarah Chen's forensic analysis had revealed that the surveillance operation had collected detailed information about royal family schedules, security procedures, and personal habits that could have been used for various hostile purposes. The comprehensive nature of the information gathering suggested that the operation was intended to support future activities rather than immediate threats, making its discovery and disruption even more crucial. Detective Inspector Morrison's investigation had led to the arrest of several individuals directly involved in the surveillance operation, though the full extent of the network and its ultimate objectives remained subjects of ongoing investigation by multiple national and international security agencies. The case had become a model for understanding and responding to sophisticated threats against high-profile targets. The relationship between Prince William and the palace security team had been strengthened by their shared experience of the crisis and its resolution. The prince's initial frustration with security protocols had evolved into a deeper understanding of their necessity and effectiveness, while the security team had gained appreciation for his genuine concern for his family's safety and his willingness to participate in enhanced protection measures. Thomas Hartwell's career had been significantly enhanced by his professional handling of the security crisis and his subsequent contributions to the development of improved protocols. His expertise in threat assessment and his demonstrated ability to make difficult decisions under pressure had led to his promotion to a senior position within the Royal Protection Unit. The technological countermeasures implemented throughout the palace included advanced detection systems for electronic surveillance equipment, enhanced communication security, and sophisticated monitoring capabilities designed to identify unusual patterns of activity that might indicate future infiltration attempts. The new systems represented a significant investment in maintaining the security of the royal family in an increasingly complex threat environment. Prince William's public duties had continued throughout the investigation and implementation of enhanced security measures, though with modified procedures that reflected the lessons learned from the surveillance operation. The balance between maintaining his public accessibility and ensuring his safety had been recalibrated based on the new understanding of potential threats and the capabilities of those who might pose them. The morning's confrontation between Thomas and Prince William had become part of the training curriculum for royal protection officers, illustrating the importance of maintaining professional standards and following established protocols even in challenging social situations. The incident demonstrated that effective security sometimes required difficult decisions that prioritized safety over convenience or social expectations. The comprehensive nature of the surveillance operation had led to reviews of security procedures at other royal residences and government facilities, as the techniques and technologies used against the palace could potentially be deployed against other high-profile targets. The investigation had contributed to broader understanding of evolving security threats and appropriate countermeasures. Chief Hayes had been recognized for her management of the security crisis and her role in coordinating the complex investigation that involved multiple agencies and addressed various technical, legal, and diplomatic considerations. Her experience and expertise had been crucial in maintaining operational security while conducting the comprehensive investigation necessary to understand and address the full scope of the threat. The anonymous tip that started the entire sequence of events was ultimately viewed as fortunate, regardless of its origins or motivations. Without the early warning that led to the discovery of the surveillance operation, the information gathering might have continued indefinitely, potentially enabling much more serious threats against the royal family and other targets. The resolution of the security crisis had strengthened the working relationships between various agencies responsible for protecting high-profile individuals and institutions. The cooperation between palace security, metropolitan police, and intelligence services had created improved communication protocols and coordination procedures that would benefit future threat response efforts. Thomas often reflected on the morning when he had challenged Prince William at the archive door, understanding now that his adherence to security protocols had played a crucial role in exposing and disrupting a sophisticated threat. The experience had reinforced his commitment to professional excellence and his understanding of the responsibilities that came with protecting the royal family. The enhanced security measures implemented throughout the palace had been designed to be as unobtrusive as possible, while providing comprehensive protection against the types of sophisticated threats revealed by the investigation. The balance between security and the normal functioning of royal duties required careful planning and continuous adjustment based on evolving threat assessments. Prince William's involvement in the security crisis had given him insights into the dedication and expertise of the professionals responsible for protecting his family, deepening his respect for their work and his understanding of the challenges they faced. His experience had also reinforced his own sense of responsibility for maintaining awareness of potential threats and supporting the security measures designed to address them. As Thomas and Prince William concluded their review of the upgraded security systems, both men understood that the morning's confrontation had been a turning point that led to fundamental improvements in royal protection. Their initial standoff had evolved into a professional partnership based on mutual respect and shared commitment to the safety and security of the royal family. The investigation and its aftermath had demonstrated that effective security in the modern world required not just technological capabilities and professional expertise, but also the courage to make difficult decisions and the wisdom to balance various competing priorities. The success of the response to the crisis had validated the importance of maintaining high professional standards and comprehensive security procedures, even when they created temporary inconvenience or social awkwardness. The ongoing protection of the royal family would continue to evolve as new threats emerged and new technologies became available, but the foundation established through the resolution of this security crisis would provide a solid basis for addressing future challenges. The lessons learned from the investigation would continue to inform security procedures and threat response capabilities for years to come.